Welcome to the Oops All Energies podcast, a show where we talk about all things Pokemon trading card and Pokemon cards in general. I'm Jovani, a newcomer to all things Pokemon, joined by our other host, resident TCG expert Jay,
What up?
and content creator Kevin.
Hi.
Welcome, guys. Welcome to the first episode. This is pretty exciting stuff.
Yes, sir.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So I wanted to start this off by really just introducing myself. My name's Jovani. I don't know anything about Pokemon. I never really played it as a kid. Never really touched the cards. Probably had like a pack or two just to open up, but never anything serious. So I'm pretty excited. I got into this with Kevin, and he showed me Pokemon cards in general, and it's been pretty fun. I haven't really done much with it since, but pretty excited. Jay, you've been playing the card game for a while now, haven't you?
So, I first started collecting when I was about 8 years old, and Diamond and Pearl had just come out the year before, and I bought my first pack of cards, and I still remember my first holo rare was a Rose Raid with a Galaxy or a Cosmic Holo print, and I kind of picked packs up off and on growing up for a little while, but started to get really serious with my brother when we got jobs at around 16 years old. So around the time of XY Breakpoint, we had always kept playing the mainline games though. Kind of took a break for a little while in the middle of Sun and Moon, and then here at the end of Sword and Shield decided to really get back into it, and I've decided to start playing competitively now for the last 6 months or so. So I've been at it for a little while, yeah.
What a history.
Live and breathe. Live and breathe.
Evan, you've played the games mainly, right? Like, I know you've collected cards a little bit, but you've played the majority of the game.
Yeah, I pretty much started out with Pokemon during the video game era. Obviously, as a kid, I had a few booster packs here and there. I think my first ever card that I remembered was the Fossil Set Ammonite, and I remember how creepy it looked, and I just tossed it in my junk drawer. But I really started around the Soul Silver era because my parents for some reason, they wouldn't let me buy like Emerald, Red, or Blue, Fire Red, and Leaf Green. They said, that's too expensive. $30 is too expensive. Here, you can have Pokemon Pinball as your first game. It's only $10 at the local Hollywood Video. I'm like, okay, that's cool. It wasn't until I was in middle school when I got a DSi, I got Soul Silver, and then I've been hooked ever since, which is Soul Silver is probably one of the best entry points for Pokemon during that era. But yeah, and then in terms of TCG, I was like a COVID baby, getting back into the TCG as a hobby. It started out with in the vending machines here in Washington State. We originally were we're the pioneers for testing out the Pokemon vending machines. And every week I would go grocery shopping, and I would hear the Pikachu scream at me every time I'd walk past it. It'd say, Celestial Storm is the latest Pokemon set. Come buy it now. And after my seventh trip of going grocery shopping, I'm like, okay, let's see what it's all about. And then I kind of got hooked from there. I pulled a full art trainer card, and the rest is history.
Yeah, right? Opening packs never really intrigues me. I'm really into this mainly for the TCG competitive scene. The cards are cool. I mean, the secret rares and illustration rares and all that, they're pretty sick. But the competitiveness is what I'm loving about this game. The decks, I built a Miraidon deck, and as my first deck, and it's fun. It's I never thought I'd be playing a card game, especially Pokemon, and I'm loving it.
The one thing that really got me hooked into playing the TCG was, I guess, the simplicity of it. Growing up, there was Yu-Gi-Oh, and of course there's Magic, and it's easy to learn in a sense. But Pokemon's the learning curve is so much less steeper than those other two card games. So getting into that was really easy for me.
Yeah, there's definitely a different curve between the three big card games. You have Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Pokemon here in the States, here in America. Yu-Gi-Oh definitely has gone a little bit to the wayside. I've heard a lot of game shops aren't able to make the same profit that they were able to off of Yu-Gi-Oh! And considering the game doesn't have like a hard rotation for cards, like every card ever printed is usable, it's a very difficult competitive scene because if you go look at a lot of the top games from regional matches and world championship matches from previous years, things are over on the first turn. Whoever goes first, is the person who wins. And then with Magic, decks to be competitive are extremely expensive because they require this specific card from this specific set that was printed forever ago, and it's extremely difficult to get into Magic unless you have money, whereas Pokemon is kind of the in-between of that. It has a good, healthy competitive scene that has constant rotation like Magic does and changes, but also doesn't, like, leave old concepts in the past. They're very much good and consistent. So Pokemon's very much an easy one to get into. You can get a deck for, about $40 to $50 and it's competitive ready. It's definitely a lot easier than the others.
Funny, how did you start like deck building? What was your kind of, I guess, stepping points to getting your deck built?
Yeah, so when it came to my first regional deck, that was Sacramento here of 2023, my buddy Corin, he and I just like were testing out new cards that had come out in the year, what is new, and going to be a shock to people when they first encounter it. At the time for Sacramento, 151 had just come out. So Blastoise was brand new. Shen Pao for that deck that I made was already out since Paldean evolved back in May or so. And so that was, already kind of a deck archetype made, but Blastoise had only been legal for a week. He hadn't shown up at any legal tournaments yet. So if you want to make a good big splash, use new cards. Get into the new stuff. Maybe you're not going to win big. Maybe you're not going to do really good, but you're going to be exposed to a lot of decks that are meta current, and you can learn how to play. Not necessarily even just like basics of the game, but the mind games of it, the strategy of it, the chains of which cards you play before which and after which, and all the different nuances of it. You just make a deck and show up. Or you can just build a deck off of, these regional champion lists. Every time that there's every time a regional championship goes on, the champion ends up having their deck list posted. Most of the deck lists get posted, but a lot of people end up taking that champion's deck list and just recreating it and using it as the standard play for the next few months or so, next few weeks or so, depending on. Or you can go with the new cards that have come out, build an archetype that you really like, and keep refining it as more cards come out in the year's sets. So many different ways you can go about it, but if you really want to see success, just take a list from like online or, pay attention to some old matches online and build it and just show up. And you'll learn. You'll learn a lot from just seeing other people's decks.
Just like you were saying, showing up to the card shop. Just go to the card shop, ask them, hey, like, build me a deck. I'm brand new, like the guy behind the counter will most likely know a meta deck or a beginner deck to suggest or just straight up build you one. We went to the card shop with our friend who just started, and he didn't have a deck yet, but he liked psychic Pokemon. So he was just like, hey, like, I like psychic Pokemon. And the guy was like, I'll build you a Gardevoir deck, And he just started grabbing the cards, and I thought that was pretty sick. Someone they know so much there that even if you don't have a deck, you don't know anything, just go there, talk to the people who are playing cards, and just kind of make friends. Everyone there is super nice. That's like the best way to start, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you go to a shop with like a very healthy competitive scene, you'll encounter people who are, they're not elitists. They're not gatekeeping, I have this best deck, everything. This is the kind of card game and a community. I mean, it's Pokemon. It's the kind of community where it's, geared towards kids, and kids are the main demographic that the Pokemon company is targeting to, more or less. But then there's us, the adults, who come and help foster those kind of communities, teach kids, and teach newcomers, and it's way more accessible than just like, oh, it's for kids. Like, no, there's people of all ages at these tournaments of all different skill levels. They will talk to you, they will help you out, they will teach you, they'll even learn stuff from you. You know, everybody has an opportunity to teach each other, and the card shop is a great, healthy place for that.
The card shops also humble you if you think you're a very great competitive person, because I got stomped by kids who are literally 10 years younger than me. I'm like, oh, I need to get better. So it also brings up your competitive drive to literally, like Jay mentioned, anyone, any age, there's all sorts of experiences, and they could show you up.
They're really good. The kids, at least at the shops that we're around, we live in the Seattle area. They're way too good.
Yeah, they have. There's a shop in downtown Seattle that has an extremely strong competitive scene, and yeah, you don't really find other places around here that have a scene like that. And when you have kids showing up that are like literally 10 to 12 years old just slamming adults, it's like, okay. I need to make a better deck and study more, because these kids can just trounce me with not even a second thought.
Yeah, no, they're really good, and that actually like makes me want to talk about the next topic I wanted to talk about, which is the show, and what my ideas for it. You know, I really want this to be the journey, at least my journey, of going from someone who doesn't know anything about Pokemon at all to being somewhat knowledgeable, enjoying the TCG, maybe get invited to Worlds at some point. I don't really see that in the future, but I mean, if it happens, it happens, you know. But I just want a place to talk about Pokemon cards. I think it would be really cool to kind of update and just kind of bring you guys along for the journey of, you know, the league challenges that I go to or we go to, the regionals that are around here. We didn't get to go to Portland, which was a bummer, but looking at doing LA, hopefully. Mm-hmm. But that kind of stuff, I think it'd be kind of fun. And everything Pokemon, you know, cards, video games that are coming out, expansions, DLCs, everything Pokemon related.
Big fan of sleeves and playmats, so we'll also be talking about like cool arts of those and everything. Like, the accessories are also another huge part of it, man. How are you going to show up to your thing without a sleeve deck and no deck box and no mat and no dice? Like, come on, man. Yeah, no, we'll also have, like, plenty of, you know, plugs on cool stuff like that and showcasing of art from the Pokemon Center. Like, they have all sorts of great accessory things, too, for the TCGs. So, like, there's some really cool stuff on there.
So, have you guys been in any tournaments, like, within the last week or two or three?
Literally was just at the League Cup yesterday at Tabletop Village, and there was a lot of Roaring Moon. Like, people are trying to make Roaring Moon work. I totally understand why they want to make Roaring Moon work. It's a free knockout move. That's really good. The thing is a lot of those decks are so different from each other that a lot of them were inconsistent. And sure, one took the tournament, but it was very, very inconsistent all across the board. Even mine was. I only took 2 out of 6 wins. So I lost 4 of my games, and because I started with 3 Sada's Vitality in my hands.
Who is your toughest matchup?
Probably the toughest matchup I ended up having was an Arceus Regigigas deck.
Oh.
Yeah, he started out with Arceus V-Star in the front of his in the active spot at the beginning of the game, and just accelerated energy onto Regigigas and used Regigigas to completely slaughter me. It was really quick.
I'm jealous. I wanted to go to that, but I had things to do.
Yeah.
Plus, it's really far for me to go, so when I go to Seattle, it's like a day thing. I have to be there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't been in any tournaments or any cups lately, unfortunately. I've been
Yeah.
modifying my Miraidon deck though, so hopefully the next time I play, it should be somewhat decent. Last thing I'd played was the mock regionals for Portland at tabletop, and it did pretty well, 3-3. So, yeah.
Yeah, I also haven't been in any tournaments recently, but the last one I was in was also that mock tournament for Portland Regionals. And I also run a Miraidon deck, and it's kind of a funky one where it's like an anti-meta rogue deck with a Roaring Moon in it. I won't bore you with all the details, but a shameless self-plug, I have like 3 videos up on my channel where I explain it. And it's very inconsistent, but it's consistent enough for me to be satisfied with it. I did squeak out with 1 win on a bye week. But yeah, no tournaments for me.
I mean, Kevin, your deck is pretty interesting, and I feel like you made that from scratch by yourself. You haven't looked up any videos. This is mainly just you just taking your deck and being like, hey, let's just this might make it better. Let's try this strategy. And it really threw everybody for a loop every time I would look over and I would see you playing, and they just have this weird look on their face like, what is he doing? What deck is this?
I literally built it from a League Battle deck, and it's so funny to watch people's reactions because they don't know who to target on my like active or bench. They're like, do I bring out their Roaring Moon? Do I take out their Iron Hands? What about those guys with like Miraidons or your Regieleki V? It's literally treasure trove of Pokemon you could take out. It's like if you take one guy out, I have another guy to come back at you.
Yeah. I'd say your deck is probably a scarier version of the general Miraidon that's out there.
Just interesting because it has, Roaring Moon in it, and no one ever expects that. So when it comes out, you're like, what?
Right.
And no one runs Turbo Energize, and oftentimes I hear it around saying that's not a meta card. It's not going to be in the meta. But I feel like maybe not anytime soon, but maybe a couple months down the line, we'll start seeing some more TMs being involved in these meta decks, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not, and let me keep using them.
TMs are very underrated, especially with some of these decks. Like TM Evolution is pretty good because I don't think most people realize is that if you're going second, you can bypass the rule where you can't evolve a Pokemon the turn you've played it or on your first turn. So if you use TM Evolution, if you're going second, you can use it as the attack and bypass that rule.
Oh.
Right, evolving early.
Another thing I learned about TM is the item Snorlax Doll. You can actually attach an energy to it, and it can use TM. So if you have that Snorlax Doll in your active spot, you can use that to evolve your bench, or put energy up onto your bench, or use de-evolution on your active opponent. It's pretty crazy what you could do with TMs and like a Snorlax Doll.
Yeah, Snorlax Doll is pretty underrated, but I think, how tons of these, like, for example, the Mew deck, it ran 4 Battle VIP passes. You're only going to use them on the first turn, and then afterwards, it's used as discard fodder for, like, Cramomatic, etc., or, like, Ultra Ball. It's probably going to end up having the same sort of usage, where it's going to end, it's really useful in the beginning, and then you can just use it for discard fodder.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that just blows my mind because you have a Snorlax doll in your deck.
Yeah, and I never play it because in order to use it, you can only use the Snorlax doll when you're setting up to play. Right. So if it's in your hand in those first 7 cards you pull, you can put it in, but if it's not, you can't use it, and it has to be that discard fodder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe people will run 4 of it in a deck. Maybe they won't. I mean, once certain things have kind of gone to the wayside in the meta, especially with Regulation E moving out, maybe, but I think it'll also take a very specific kind of deck to use it that requires more stall in setup.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? I think it would still be an interesting gimmick.
Jovani, you mentioned you run Turbo Miraidon. So when Regulation E rotates out, what are you going to do with that?
Well, obviously, Flaffy's gone. That's the first thing that I think of, and I think that's really it for my deck. I think the only other thing that's going out from that deck is obviously the Battle VIPs. I don't really think there's anything else. That's the main worry for Maridon in general, is like the Flaffy, Mareep, you need the energies. But I think I'm just gonna switch out the Flaffy for I think it's energy stickers, energized stickers. I think it's the trainer card where you just play it and you can get an energy from your discard pile onto one of your bench Pokemon.
What?
So that's a thing. But I've seen a lot of people already setting up and getting ready for that by putting in 4 of those. I feel like that's really it. I usually only use the Flaffy for like mid to late game. I never actually discarded that many energies, so it wasn't that helpful for me most of the time. So I don't think that's going to be that big of an issue for me. I mean, Turbo Maridon is all about, turn 2, amp you very much,
Right.
You want to get people out fast. So that's probably going to be the same thing, just trying to set up your Maridon or Iron Hands as soon as possible. So I never really relied on Flaffy. It came in handy a couple times, but never enough to where I was like, ooh, this is gonna hurt,
Gotcha. Okay, that's good to know.
I'm still thinking about doing like a hybrid, because Turbo is way too fast and way too inconsistent.
Yeah.
There were so many times where I was like, I wish I had a Regieleki EV, or something a little bit more consistent instead of just discarding all my cards with a Peony and trying to get electric generators to knock people out. So, and it has some decent matchups. Usually the decks that have like one single prize cards, that like Gardevoir I think is a good matchup for it. Charizard could be a good matchup. It doesn't have many bad matchups, but it's wildly consistent.
Yeah, I think, on topic of the energy stickers, that's a card that could get used in a lot more decks, and I think people are overlooking. Sure, it's a coin flip, but it's another card that has gotten overlooked from the SV era. There's a lot of these cards from the SV era that have really been overlooked in favor of a lot of the stuff that came back out in Sword and Shield, which, fair. I know, I understand. You want to use all the Sword and Shield stuff through to the end as much as you can use it while it's still in regulation, but people have really overlooked some of these cards from Scarlet Violet. Like, Energy Sticker is actually pretty good. If you run that in a Roaring Moon deck on top of Dark Patches, on top of Sadas, like, that's a lot of energy recovery out of the discard pile. And also you're running if you have a Radiant Greninja in there and a Pokestop, then you're set on energy probably. And if you really need that, like, a coin flip, you're really on the emergency and you just got to pull it, fine, not great, but the option's still there in case you've used all of your Dark Patches, all of your Sadas. It's just another good option.
Jacob, you keep talking about Roaring Moon, and I know you have a Roaring Moon deck. Why do you like it so much? I know you have a Gardevoir deck too. Like, why aren't you using that deck?
Because I think Roaring Moon has a lot of potential, and I think there have been a lot of dark type cards that have come out in Scarlet Violet that have been overlooked. Like, there's the Obsidian Flames Darkrai that for 1 energy, 20 damage, puts them to sleep. Every turn they're getting set to sleep, and then his second attack is a 120 damage, 3 dark energy, but then you get to move all of those energy onto your bench in any way you like. So then you can move all of the energy onto Roaring Moon or to multiple Roaring Moon. There's a lot of energy movement out of the deck and a lot of escape options too, because Morpeko is in the deck and it has a free retreat cost with no energy on it, so you can just dip that out of there super quick, or you can put it up in front in case you need to protect Roaring Moon really quick,
Now, your deck that you have, is this a deck that you built yourself and you kind of, put everything in there for a specific reason, or did you copy a list like top 8 or top 10 at regionals or something?
So this Roaring Moon deck, when Roaring Moon came out, there was some of an archetype for it. So I was looking at things like, okay, what are definitely good cards for Roaring Moon, and looked at what some discussion was. I looked at some discussion like on Reddit and whatnot and saw, yeah, you want to have discard capability. You know, people were saying Pokestop and Professor's Research, and I was like, okay, those are good ideas. I took those to Portland, and I actually used those in Portland, but I didn't think about a Radiant Greninja, and I didn't think about a Luminion, because you definitely want to be able to grab that Professor's Research a lot easier, and Greninja just helps with getting that, you know, draw power and energy into the discard. So I think the version that I first ran was not optimal, and it was a little too focused on trying to do the special techs of the dark types. Like, I only was running one more Pekko and 2 Darkrai, and I had a 2/2 line of a Lipard from Paradox Rift. And that was to try and have Roaring Moon deal itself damage through Frenzied Gouging, get the free knockout, and then hope, which probably wasn't a great idea, that I can switch out next turn to get Lipard in front, so that Lipard can use its attack that moves all the damage counters from one of my benched onto their active, which would have been cool, but a little too difficult to pull off. You needed to have multiple turns, you needed to try and do, you know, multiple actions rather than just, you know, take the suicide off of Roaring Moon and, you know, just self-knockout.
Yeah, the way you talk about Roaring Moon, you're so passionate. You feel like you know a lot about the deck. You're learning a lot from each regionals and challenge cups and all that stuff that you go to. You're always playing the deck. You're learning from each one of them. What are the next moves for that deck? I'm very curious.
I think right now for this deck is... it needs Arven in it. Doesn't have any Arven. Because if it really comes down to it, you either need to play Asadas to get the energy out of the discard, or if you really need to, you play Arven to get the search for the dark patch to get it out. There isn't quite enough. It doesn't quite yet have enough energy acceleration to it. There were a few times at the cup or the challenge yesterday where I ended up with 3 Sada's Vitality in my starting hand. That's just not feasible to get anywhere from a start. I wasn't able to get Greninja out. I couldn't get my Nest Balls. So it needs a little bit more start action. Because once it gets started, it keeps going. But it needs to get started, and sometimes the start hand isn't enough for that yet. So I'm wondering if cards from Temporal Forces are going to be the key for making him a focus deck really strong, or Temporal Forces will give us enough ancient cards across the board that you can just make it an ancient deck, period.
Yeah, it's that deck is scary. I played against it a couple times, and at least whenever I go up against a Roaring Moon as a Miraidon player, I get a little scared. I'm not sure if that's every Miraidon player. I think it's supposed to be like a 50-50, you know, winning odds, but I don't feel that. I feel like it's like a 60-40, really. Like, at least I'm 40.
I would say it's definitely a 50-50. So yeah, with that deck, that's the reason why I teched in Hoopa, is because it is a 50-50 chance, but Hoopa's a Terra Fighting type EX, and its first attack deals damage based on the amount of energy on my opponent's side of the field. So, you're accelerating all this up with your electric generators and your Flaffy, and Miraidon got everybody out, and they've all got energy attached, and you're going to use Raichu's attack. Yeah, nope, just getting absolutely clobbered out.
Have you been able to pull that off?
I did pull that off. I did pull that off yesterday in one game against a Miraidon, and that was one of my 2 wins. The other one was against a Gardevoir deck where I just kept Calamity storming over and over on little Ralts.
Oh no.
That's just how it goes. And when you're hitting Gardevoir for weakness, it makes it really easy. I genuinely think that Roaring Moon takes the better matchup there. Especially when you also have things like Morpeko just deals 70 damage. You're hitting for weakness at 140 on some of those little ones. Like, they're out of there. Any Curlias that are on the bench, they're done for with a single attack from Morpeko. Darkrai keeps that thing asleep and doesn't let it, like, be able to attack, and whatnot, can't retreat out to switch for the right Gardevoir to attack with. Like, it counters it pretty decently hard, I think, at this point now, we've discovered.
Yeah, I want to see Roaring Moon succeed. It's a cool deck. It's a cool card. I think it'd be really cool to see that. Something that's really surprising me is that Lost Box Giratina is winning quite a bit.
Yeah.
I have the deck. I play it. It confuses me. I don't think it's all that great, but like I'm seeing it win regionals. I think it's won 2 regionals, hasn't it? Already, like in a row.
Yeah.
I think it was Portland and
It won Portland. It was a mirror match for the championships at Portland of 2 Giratina V-Star Lost Box decks. And I want to say, not San Antonio. It wasn't San Antonio. Was won by Azul with his Charizard deck.
I think it was the one. It was recent, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was one of the European ones, I want to say, but I could be wrong. I would have to look up the schedule here for that one. Let me...
Yeah, I just find that I don't know quite enough information about the rotation and what cards are getting rotated out. At least for Lost Box, I think it's safe after rotation. But yeah, it's a fun deck. I mean, I feel like it's based off of obviously making decisions of what to keep and what to lose in your lost zone and everything. But it's interesting to me that deck is winning when I don't think it's all that great.
Yeah, so it looks like Charlotte was the last regional last weekend. So I want to say it was Giratina that won that one, probably too.
That would make sense.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because for a while there, the Lost Box deck wasn't running Giratina for a little while, and now it's back running Giratina in it.
How do you play against that deck? Whenever I play against that Lost Box, my win rate, I'd want to say, is about 50-50, but when I do lose, I'm like, I don't know who I should attack first, especially when I don't have my Iron Hands built up.
Well, I mean, the whole generator relies on comfies, so I would say just take out the comfies. You can't draw cards. You can't, continue to get cards. The whole point of the deck is to cycle through your deck and grab as many cards as you can, fill up that lost zone, and then attack with Giratina once you hit 10.
Yeah. Yeah, the main problem though is that like you've got 4 comfies in the deck, and then they're also running like 4 Colress's experiments. So off of those Colress's experiments alone, if they haven't prized any, they can get enough out into their lost zone for Giratina's 10 cards in the lost zone needed for an instant knockout kind of deal. Like the deck is really, really lost zone as a concept through the history of the TCG has always been incredibly powerful. It was incredibly powerful in the Heart Gold Soul Silver era. It was incredibly powerful in the Sun and Moon era. And now again that they brought it back, they kept bringing it back into Gen 8. It's just they have made it so ridiculously powerful. You have Mirage Gate that allows you to accelerate the energy onto Giratina once you have all of that set up. Cramorant attacks for free energy once you have a few set into the Lost Zone, and all that takes is a single Comfey and 1 Colress's experiment. Like, that's the entire issue. You need to be able to lock up their abilities on things that aren't rule boxes. You need to be able to stop their ability from getting supporters out. You need to be able to stop their energy acceleration. Like, how do you do all of that? You can't cover all of that with a single deck, and that is why it's so ridiculously powerful. But it is still a high skill deck because you have to make the right decisions about what you're getting rid of and what you aren't getting rid of, and which order you're playing them in, and what you're keeping alive and what you're not. Do you save the Cramorants? Do you use them now? Do you pull out the comfies and keep using them, or do you keep them on the backbench? Like, it's a high skill level deck, but it has literally so many avenues for how it gets to what it's doing, and what it's doing doesn't have enough cards to block those actions that you can't. There's nothing you can do against it. Once it gets started up, it's just it's over.
I built it not even realizing that it was good, and so I was playing with it, and the whole time I'm just stressed. I was like, if I do this, hopefully this doesn't bite me. later on in the game, and it usually does. So I'm guessing it's just my poor decision making that's obviously hindering the deck being good. But it's stressful playing that deck. I am just like unenjoyable in my opinion. I'm like, wow, I'd rather just go back to Miraidon and just ooga booga, just hit hard and hit fast. Like less decision making, easier, more fun to play kind of deck. I'm surprised there isn't a Lost Box Roaring Moon deck. You know, like why isn't that a thing?
I've seen it.
Oh, there is. Somebody was running it at the challenge the other day, and it was an abomination, dude. I'm pretty sure that that's the one that ended up taking the top, if I remember correctly. Let me go look at. I have to look at their page again because they made a post of the winner.
Kevin, that's your next deck. Lost Box Roaring Moon.
I can't even think that far ahead. So,
no, as far as I know, it was just Roaring Moon, but I know there was one that got really far, at least to top cut, that was a Lost Box Roaring Moon. That was just ridiculous.
my goodness.
I'm very excited for Temporal Forces. Can't wait for that set to come out and just really shake up the meta. I want new decks. I want new strategies. We do have a very healthy meta, though. It's nice that everyone can play whatever deck they want, and the odds of you winning are fairly high, you know? Like, at least, 50-50 to most decks. Miraidon against Charizard, not a great matchup, but I still won, like, 3 out of the 4 I've played against, so it's like, okay, all right,
Yeah, to a degree, there is it's a little bit of luck. How good is your start hand? What did you prize? Blah, blah, blah. There's those kind of things. Are you drawing the cards you need when you do your draw things? But at the end of the day, it really does come down to the skill of you thinking out, okay, if I play this card, I grab this card to do this, so I can grab that, so I can do this. Like, how are you logic chaining? And that's the great thing, is that there's so many different decks that allow for multiple different complex logic chains and simple logic chains that work. You have those complex logic chains like the Lost Box deck, like the Gardevoir deck, that require intense decision making, complex, pragmatic thinking. And then you have things like Miraidon and Roaring Moon that are just like, okay, get the energy onto it and just start swinging. Like, there's so many different ways to play it. And pretty soon here, when we have like a future archetype and an ancient archetype, those are going to be really interesting, because ancient is going to be playing off of probably special conditions like the Cloth deck has been playing off of, because you're going to have Brute Bonnet in that deck and Walking Wake dealing more damage for each of the special conditions your opponent's affected by. But then you've got the future cards, which are boosting each other's power, and you're dropping damage counters with Iron Valiant and taking extra prizes with hands. Like, there's going to be some pretty cool stuff coming along here.
Yeah. No, I'm very excited. Which brings me into the next topic that we're going to talk about, which is how much we spent on Pokemon cards in the last week or month. And I want to bring that up because Paldean Fates just came out, and I know you guys dropped quite a bit.
Man.
Especially Jacob.
I plead the fifth.
Yeah, I went to Tabletop's midnight release for the set, and honestly, probably one of the funnest activities I've ever done in the middle of the night, because I'll tell you what, I went to college, I did partying, man, that stuff was stupid. This was so much fun. Like, oh my god, man, it was awesome. Like, everybody was just like excited for each other's pulls and talking about, what they're going to replace in their decks, and like getting excited about shiny cards, and like speculating on where market prices are going to go, not being all like, oh, this needs to be this price, of like, do you guys really think that Charizard's going to hold that $200? I don't know, man. Like, it's just fun. It was fun. It was awesome. And I didn't particularly pull anything super great, but I did get like full art Paldean Clodsire, full art Toedscruel. Like, I love my purple boys. I love my purple and pink shinies, man. This stuff it's like royalty, so it's super cool.
How much did you spend, though?
Way too much. I probably have already spent like $250 on. Let's see. I bought I've bought 2 ETBs so far, and I think a total of 12 blisters. Let's see. That night we opened 8, and then at the show, no, 11 blisters. 11 blisters in total. Yeah. So I've so far, yeah, about like $200 to $250 on Paldean Fates already in the first 2 days of it being out.
Jeez.
That tracks.
Get that shiny.
I think I'm in the same boat. I ordered 1 Pokemon Center ETB. I got 1 regular ETB. I got 3 of the tech sticker packs. And then I also got my partner a Costco pack of Pokemon cards for like $40 because it was her birthday on like last Friday. So that was about $230, $240. I'm like, oopsies, I spent a lot of money.
Man.
Shiny cards.
Any
I
card?
didn't get any. I'm waiting for Temporal Forces. I'm just gonna kind of chill. I might buy a couple of singles, like the Mew EX, when the price drops.
Mhm.
But I don't think I'm gonna buy any Paldean Fates unless I need them for decks. I'm not a collector. You guys are collectors. I just want to build decks and compete. But sheesh,
Listen,
Yeah.
I was looking for the Mew the entire time. So I opened up Paldean Fates with 3 other people. And we were all looking for the Mew, and I was like, okay, this has to be a Mew. I ended up pulling Iono, which I'm not mad about, but I'm like, that's not the Mew, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah, release night, Corin pulled the Iono, and it had the entire store freaking out because that's what the store was chasing. And so like Corin pulled it, and they put it on like the store's compilation video that's posted on Instagram. You can go check it out on Tabletop Village on Instagram. And he also pulled 2 of the Bubble Mews. And literally everybody's like, what? And I'm literally just sitting there like, that's supposed to be my luck, dude. What? Because I always pull the chase. I pull the chase cards usually when a set comes out. Like literally, the last 4 main SV sets, I got the Iona when the booster box came out. I got the Miraidon art with the booster box when it came out. I got not the Charizard. What did I get from Obsidian Flames? It wasn't the Charizard. There was something else in. Oh no, I got the gold Charizard, not the art Charizard. So that was still like super fire. And then for Scarlet and Violet, I got both. I got Roaring Moon in my my booster box, and then Iron Valiant out of a pack, and both around set release. I just have the crazy luck, and so I'm like, Corin, that's supposed to be mine. What are you doing?
You gotta give it to other people, man. You gotta share it.
Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. Of course.
That's
I'm
unfair.
just playing.
Which means it's my time soon. I'll open 1 pack, get a chase card, $200 card, and then sell that and buy more packs.
Jovani used up his pack magic on one of like the bigger pack openings when I got him into the TCG.
Yeah, that really hooked me. I pulled a Giratina V. Was it a full? I don't know the terms for it. It was like an alternate art, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
From Lost Origin.
Oh, you got the.
Yeah. And that was a Christmas gift. Kevin bought me one of that Arceus, like collector's box, right? Or
it was a premium, ultra premium collection from GameStop.
The GameStop exclusive one, yeah.
Yeah, we were just opening packs, and then I was like, "Oh, that's a cool card." And I was like, "Oh, that's a chase card. That's probably worth something." And I looked it up. I was like, "Oh, that's $240, I think."
It is
at the time.
The chase of like 2022. It is the most expensive card I want to say of 2022 from Lost Origin specifically as well. Like that card is insane.
It was a sick card. I had it sitting there on my desk for like a couple weeks, and it just felt weird having a $250 card just sitting there. So I was like, all right, I gotta sell that and get some like booster boxes to hopefully get more cards.
See, the next time you get something like that, you gotta get it graded.
Yes, but I also felt weird trying to send a card that was $250 to get graded. What if it gets lost in the mail, or? they say they never got it, you know.
Yeah, there's insurance. Well, see, that's the great thing. Here's a little lesson for grading for everybody. When it comes to grading, you can declare the value of the cards that you send in so that they will actually insure your card's value. So you can declare that, like, it is a near mint. I'm saying that it's, $250 on that Giratina. Even if the price like fluctuates, it goes down or whatever in the next few weeks, even after you've sent it out, they'll still insure you for that $250 that you declared its value at. So you getting things graded isn't, I know there's the horror stories. I understand there's the horror stories, and there are the horror stories. They're true. They're out there, PSA messing up people's cards, CGC, cases getting cracked and whatnot in the mail, things like that. But there is a reason these things are the way they are. And there is a reason that there are systems then in place to be able to make sure that us as members of a community and the customers are satisfied with the service that we are getting from it. Because it is a service. We're not just necessarily sending in a product and getting a type of product back. It is a service. They're telling you, they're legitimizing your card. Without grading services, the secondary market would not be what it is, and the community would not have the level of like trading and value to it that it does. Whether you see that as a good or bad thing is up to you, but there are definitely benefits to how grading is done and whatnot. And definitely there are better companies than others. I personally would not use PSA. Would not use PSA. I would use, we are not sponsored. We are not sponsored. We are not getting any cut. Personally, from my research and experience, Beckett Grading Services would be the best because Beckett Grading Services has been around the longest. They have been around doing stuff for sports cards like baseball, football, basketball cards, and the like. So they've been around for quite a long time. Man, they'll even do jerseys, your concert tickets. They'll grade those things. It's pretty cool. As far as I know, PSA doesn't do all of that, but PSA is still quite reputable. They are still very solid. Beckett's just been around the longest.
This could just be me throwing stuff out there, but I'm pretty sure, isn't Beckett like one of the worst ones, like value-wise, if you get a card graded? Isn't it like one of the worst, like,
not
value?
Not necessarily. A lot of the time, based on the market, when you look at the market, a lot of the time it's CGC cards. Because CGC has a much more lax style of grading. They have a much more lax grading system. So a CGC 9 probably ends up being a PSA 7. Whereas, like, with the other thing with a Beckett one, though, is that it also tells you subgrades. So when you look at your slab from a Beckett one, you see an overall grade, and then you also see corners, edges, surface, back, etc. There's like 4 other small details that they list on there. So you can also see how good of a condition those things are. It's more nuanced. So if you like having more information presented to you on these, Beckett is the way to go. Also, there is the coveted Black Label Pristine 10. It is the most expensive version of that Giratina card. The Pristine 10 Giratina alt art from Lost Origin goes for around, from last I checked, $3,000. It might be less, it might be more.
Sweet Jesus. Yeah, that's I almost sent that card in to get graded, but I examined it pretty thoroughly, and it wasn't centered all that great.
Just a little bit.
A little bit. It would have gotten like probably an 8. There was one of the corners got a little like scratched or something out of the package. It didn't look. If it was a 10 or a 9, I would have sent it in, but it definitely looked like an 8 or a 7, and I was like, that's not worth it for me. I'd rather I wanted to trade it and get a couple booster boxes. Since I got it as a gift, technically free. I wanted to get a booster box and try and open up and get more. I was looking for a Lugia
Silver Tempest.
Yep. Yeah. So that's what we were hoping to get. We didn't get it, but
nope.
It was fun. It's the whole point. You're just having some fun.
Yeah. at the end of the day, you can't base the fun you're having on the value of the cards that you pulled. You still, you're still having fun, you got to realize it's also a little bit of light gambling. Sure, you do get some money return out of these things when you trade in your bulk, and they have trade value. But at the end of the day, when you're ripping packs, you are kind of gambling. It's a light gamble, but it's not meant to be, super crazy, and you're just supposed to have fun with it. Have fun with it. Open your packs. You can definitely have a sealed collection. Nothing wrong with that either.
Oh yeah, those go for quite a bit of money.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, no. Old sealed product is way cool, man. Like, don't get me wrong. Old sealed product is way cool. My thing is when you got those, the crazy scalper dudes that, buy up 80 bajillion boxes of it, and they're like, I'm going to keep these sealed. And it's like, okay, why? Like, 2021's over, dude.
Are there any chase cards you guys are looking for right now? Anything in specific where you're like, I really, really, really need that card next?
Well, I pulled the Iono, so I think I'm good with that. Probably just whatever else is in Paldean Fates, really.
I really want that Charizard from Fates, man. That Charizard from Fates is pretty sick. It is really sick. But I think beyond that, nothing technical. I mean, I've pulled so much from all of these main SV sets that not anything from those. So I'm just really looking forward to those new arts from Temporal Forces. The Paradox Swords of Justice and the Paradox Beasts from Johto. Like, oh my lord, those arts are beautiful.
Yeah. No, I'm so excited for Temporal Forces. I just saving up money right now for it. I'm gonna go ham. I'm probably gonna spend $200 just like you guys on Paldean Fates, around that, maybe more. I want to get everything from that set.
Does that come out before LA Regionals?
Yes. So here is a little bit of the schedule for sets and tournaments. There are other bonus products coming out, and y'all can probably go check out like PTCG Radio. Shout out Wasi. He's a cool guy for like more nuanced small product reviews and release schedules. But the next set comes out, I want to say it is March 20. Oh, I know it's March. It's the end of March. Second to last weekend of March. March 22nd is the release of Temporal Forces, and that is also the same weekend as Vancouver Regionals. Now, Temporal Forces will not be legal that same weekend for Vancouver Regionals. Maybe it'll be legal at your local game shops, They're local tournaments that aren't sanctioned by Pokemon themselves. They're just a local get-together, play a tournament, win a box. But legally, for the Play Pokemon program, you cannot play Temporal Forces, or any new set for that matter, the first 2 weeks of it being released. So we will not see Temporal Forces be legal until April 5th, which is also when the rotation occurs. As soon as Temporal Forces becomes legal, the rotation occurs, and Regulation Mark E, which will include cards from Battle Styles, Chilling Reign, Evolving Skies, Celebrations, and Fusion Strike, they will all be gone from rotation and will no longer be legal for tournament play at regionals, challenges, cups, etc. Now, May is... Oh, I don't remember the exact date. I'll have to look a little bit deeper. But May is when LA happens. I want to say it's the middle of May. So
24th through the 20, something like that, right? The 25th?
Yeah. 24th to the 26th, I want to say then. That sounds right. That will be the LA Regional. So yes, Temporal Forces will be live at that time. So we will possibly see all sorts of new stuff.
Yeah. I'm waiting to edit my deck further for when Temporal Forces comes out, because that's when, LA, when we're going, Temporal Forces will be out, everyone will be playing, the decks are going to be so modified, new rotations, all of that. There's going to be a lot to do come March.
Yeah. I don't think we've had nearly this amount of a meta shakeup since kind of maybe sort of in the middle of the Sword and Shield era. Second year of Sword and Shield was a little bit of a shakeup with Fusion Strike and Rapid Strike, Single Strike, but it didn't didn't hit quite the same that like tag teams did, and like using a GX move and things like that, you know? So this should be a really interesting rotation. And A-Specs are back. So
Yeah.
shout out
I've
Black
never-
and White era.
What is A-Specs for those of us who don't know?
A-Specs are kind of like Radiance and other and like Prism Stars back in the Sun and Moon era. You can or I think also Shining cards and Star cards that you like Umbreon Star, Espeon Star, those cards. You can only have one copy of them in the deck. Period. So A-Specs are going to be like that, but for trainers. Trainers that, as in like items, supporters, tools. We haven't seen a stadium, but we have seen a special energy. So those 4 cards are capable of being A-Specs. You will only be allowed to run one copy of it in your deck. And I think so far we've only seen 7 of them. And some of them are pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, that's where like I've seen people talk about them, and because you can only run one in your deck, my thinking is, wow, that's not that. I mean, it's not. It's helpful, but I didn't think it would be like crazy overpowered in any way in that sense. But everyone's saying that they're going to be amazing.
There's certain ones.
Which ones?
Everybody's absolutely loving Prime Catcher, because Prime Catcher does what the supporter of Guzma did back in the Sun and Moon sets. Basically, it's bosses. It's escape rope, but you get to choose. You get to choose what your opponent switches in, and then you also get to switch in.
Oh.
Right. So it's better than escape rope because you get to decide what you're attacking and what you're bringing into the active. But we've also seen it before, so it's not like it's anything super new, crazy, busted, unique. It's just, okay, we have an old card that's usable as a new thing now and more limited. So not so bad. I'm really looking at I forget what it's called, but it's a cape, and it's basically the same as the luxurious cape from Paradox Rift, but instead of only being able to be played on something without a rule box, you can play it on anything, and it gives them 100 extra HP.
Oh.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Imagine that on
That
Charizard.
sounds pretty crazy. That's scary.
Yeah, Roaring Moon, keep him at 330 instead of 290. That's pretty scary. That's... Ooh.
All right. Well, that concludes the first episode of Oops All Energies.
Yep.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Jay and Kevin, for coming out.
Yep, we hope to catch more of y'all here another time and play some more fun games, talk some more stuff, and let y'all know how we're doing on our tournaments and how we're doing on our collections.
See y'all later.